Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to join us online and here in person. And thank you to the ISTRAC for hosting us again. My name is Diego Padilla Phillips. I'm a director at WSP in the UK, and I've been supporting our decarbonisation efforts since 2020. Back then, we made a commitment to reduce the impact of our buildings by 50% by 2030. And if you're interested in reading an update of our progress, we just published something on the ISTRAC magazine this month, telling about the challenges and how complex it has been. I'm here today with the rest of the steering group, Program from Rumble, David from Candle, Ed from Arab, Kai from Multiplex, and Ian from Alien Wood, who's not here today because he's taking extended paternity leave. But also Emma from WSP and Bryony from Elliott Wood, who have supported the effort massively this year. It has been 6 years since the movement began, and this is our 5th annual summit. And it's wonderful to see how things have changed around us and all the great work that we're doing and has a positive impact. 2025 has been a year full of progress, and I wanted today to be a positive message, amidst all the negativity that we hear around us. So the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard pilot started this year, and it has been the result of a great effort by a multidisciplinary team of professionals from many organizations. The Engineers Reuse Collective was created, aiming to promote the reuse of existing buildings and materials, which is absolutely the most fundamental thing that we can do to reduce how much stuff we use. The industry has evolved this understanding of the use and implications of GGBS and the percentage of scrap steel. The institution and the climate group have helped with really good publications in relation to this. Other industry initiatives, such as the ACDG and Concrete Zero, continue to grow in their efforts of decarbonizing concrete. The principles of regenerative design are becoming more understood, and we have a brief message today from Oliver Broadbent about their latest book. And of course, the International Court of Justice landmark verdict on countries' obligations regarding climate change, confirming they have binding duties under international law to address the crisis. But at the same time, voices on the other side of the spectrum have become louder and have found strong leadership that is trying to reverse all the amazing work and progress that we have made. But we're not going to fall for misinformation. The facts are clear. Our planet is our breaking point. It is already showing signs of distress everywhere, and it's because of human activity. This is not a debate about global warming or anyone who oversimplifies it to that. It is about how we use our natural resources beyond planetary boundaries and what we do with them. It is about the unsustainable extraction, production, and disposal of materials. It is about energy security. It is about water. It is about extreme weather, famine, modern slavery. And it is about communities and livelihoods, about billions of humans being at risk because of our actions. It is more than politics. It is beyond politics. It is about the human race and our role in history and our survival. But the signs are also optimistic. Sustainability has become a fundamental part of all the work that we do. Our clients, our cities, they demand sustainable buildings. Economies around the world are seeing the benefits of sustainable development, clean energy, and more. Our role as designers has never been more important. At Structural Engineers Declare, our purpose is to advocate for better buildings, lower carbon buildings, those that integrate regenerative design principles to restore our planet and work for the next generation, for our friends, our families, our children, our grandchildren. It has never been more important to be a good structural engineer, to design efficiently, to innovate, to create better buildings. And it has never been more exciting either, because we can actually make a difference. We have the power in our hands. Our calculations, the carbon footprint of our designs, which is a carbon handprint, is so much greater than anything else we can do as individuals. That is our responsibility as designers. So this year's gathering brings together engineers, designers, sustainability experts to share their experiences, tackle key challenges, and rethink the role of structural engineering in an era of limited resources. We have a powerful keynote speech to start the conversation about ethics in practice and how we make decisions that balance the need of people, planet, and profit. This is followed by the role of the structural engineers declare the commitments we've made and how those commitments need to adapt. Then we'll speak about material sourcing, going beyond carbon, exploring the broader environmental and social impacts of extraction, how we use materials, and how we can build more resilient and responsible supply chains. And finally, we have some industry leaders in a panel sharing their experience on how they created climate action plans for their companies and how they're doing. So, a huge thank you to all the contributors for their input today, our speakers, our panelists. I would also like to thank Multiplex for the kind sponsorship today, and you can find out more about what they do upstairs during the break. We hope that learnings from today will encourage you to go further, so we can continue to build on the success of the last 5 years. The time is now, and your role as structural engineers is fundamental to drive real change. The fact that you are here in person and online makes me very hopeful that we are committed to make a difference. So we hope you enjoy this afternoon, and now I leave you with your keynote speaker, Roger Steer. Roger, welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I won't say good afternoon because many of you dialing in, it may be first thing in the morning or in the evening, who knows. But it's lovely to be here, and thank you to the committee for inviting me to speak today. The subject of our discussion and our thinking today is leading with integrity. This is really focusing on the human, which then enables us to focus on the decisions we all make as philosophers in my case, but as structural engineers in your case. And then we're going to see how this helps you in the discussions and the decisions you make with your clients, with each other, other consultants, and so on. I'm going to break this up into 4 sections. We're going to discuss what do we mean by the word integrity. I'm going to give you a little clue. We're going to talk about not just human moral integrity, but structural integrity. Thought I would slide that in, it might be relevant. Then we'll explore how we, as Homo sapiens, make the right decisions together. There are 2 aspects to this. One is to have a framework in our mind, some perspectives to think about. The other is to recognize the power of the social gathering to answer these questions. This is something that's rarely explored in moral reasoning and critical thinking, but actually the arguments we have with each other enable us to make better stress-tested decisions. Do you like that one as well? I've got stress testing in. I'm on a roll. I'm just waiting for the third one. It'll pop into my head. Then we're going to look at how this process, which happens better in our personal lives with family and friends, works less well at our workplaces. And there are very simple reasons for that. And then finally, I'm not going to do this last one. This is something that I want you to think about online and contribute through Slido, and people in the room here to discuss. What are we going to do with this now going forward? So, what is integrity? I'm going to play you a short video. It is about human integrity, and it's also about structural integrity. As you're watching it, I want you to think about the human qualities that you witness. And by human qualities, I mean character traits, values, behaviors. People doing the right thing, people maybe doing the wrong thing. So let's see how I've been able to blend human, moral, and structural integrity. What did you think? Not much health and safety going on around there, is there? I actually love Carla. I hope, I wish she was one of my granddaughters. What a brave girl. And it's something about leadership when a 7-year-old girl becomes top of the tower. Wonderful. So my challenge or opportunity now in the room and online is to think about what it takes to build a human tower, and particularly about the human qualities, the values, the behaviors, the emotions that are required here. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 minutes. Online, if you want to start sharing your thoughts through Slido, I'll keep an eye on that. In the room, I'll just ask people to shout out after 2 or 3 minutes what human qualities you witnessed there. So over to you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We already have one Slido comment from online. Trust, focus, determination, and teamwork. What else have we got? Bravery, courage, yeah.
A little bit of madness as well.
Sorry? Madness. Insanity. Yeah, what else? What else did you see? Maybe not so obvious. What connects the human beings? Remember the way the mother was looking at her daughter? Love. Thank you. What else?
Meticulous planning.
Meticulous planning. Now, I'm interested, you guys, structural engineers, did you see the overhead shot and the sort of the pattern they assembled in before they all pushed into the center? Does that have a name in, Okay, all right. I'm a bit thick, sorry. So, but it was interesting how they got themselves into position and pushed themselves together. So what's the connection? Why did I show that video? To get us to think about what it means to be human and have moral integrity. Any thoughts there? By the way, online, please keep sending questions, comments, and so on, so I can see them.
We work better together
Ah.
than individuals. Interesting.
Both is true, but we are better together. We're a highly social species. It's easier to get stuff done, real stuff, together. I mean, we don't make the next generation on our own. Well, test tubes and labs, I guess, but life is a social enterprise. So, how do we make the right decisions together? This is a key slide. You can screenshot it, take an iPhone photo of it. This, I believe, will all be shared with you afterwards. So here's the basis of morality, and this description, this is called descriptive ethics. This is not someone's ideal. It may be, but this defines and describes how Homo sapiens has been building communities and societies for as long as we can find out. It goes back to the archaeological record. From point number one, from the moment we are born as fragile infants, we survive and grow only because other people love and care for us. That is the beginning and end of morality. Compassion is the basis for morality, Arthur Schopenhauer. The most important statement. We are fragile infants, or we were fragile infants. How old must we be before we become truly independent of other people, would you say? Anyone? Thank you. I often get a number, 18, 32. I'm always listening out for the never word. In fact, the most cruel punishment we can inflict on people is solitary confinement. Disconnects us from our tribe, our families. The next bit is love is great, but it won't feed us, not directly. So we sustain ourselves and our communities by solving problems like sharing scarce resources fairly. So fairness, distributive justice is another cornerstone moral value that makes up our integrity. And this is a key line for you. All our material and energy and other resources are scarce. It's just that our modern fake economic theories have externalized most of the cost of those, and that's why we are now paying the price, and future generations will be paying the price for that decision. And we do that, we make these decisions through social debate, values-based decisions, and then action. As I said at the outset, social debate is critical to critical thinking and moral reasoning. And I'm going to come back to this when we look at how things sometimes go wrong in the workplace. And finally, we have culture. We sustain the norms, what we ought to do, and taboos, what we should not do, of behavior through storytelling and positive and negative reinforcement. Netflix, other streaming services are available. Box sets, films, BBC documentaries are the stories we tell to share experiences now amongst billions of us, and billions through history. And a positive and negative reinforcement is all about incentives and disincentives. There are consequences for our actions. Does all that make sense to you? Good. I've got another piece for you here. So this is, again, more descriptive ethics. This is from a group of anthropologists at Oxford, led by Oliver Scott Curry. And they have looked at 60 very different societies around the world today. 60. Some advanced economies, some more primitive, developing economies. And there are 7 constants that you find across all of those 60 societies. The first one, here's love again, help your family love and care for other people. That is the root of morality. Help your group. So we start nuclear in a small group, then we go out to our neighbours, our co-workers, and so on, because actually the size of the group matters. So yes, we can survive as a group of 12, but having 12 groups of 12 gives us our core tribal unit. I know 12 12s are 144, but it's actually called 150, the Dunbar number. Anyone come across that through anthropology? Yeah. So the basic unit where we know each other well enough to have meaningful relationships, the maximum is about 150. If you have hundreds of friends on TikTok, Facebook, you don't. You have followers. Next one, return favors. Forgive others and repay debts. Forgiveness is not very fashionable today in our world of conflict and anger, but forgiveness is absolutely critical. Be brave. We saw that with Carla and the people waiting for her to fall on their heads. Put yourself at risk for others. Divide resources fairly. Here we are, we have that resource distribution thing again, scarce resources. Be willing to compromise. Respect elders and leaders. Difficult today. I remember a time when, I'm old enough to remember a time where I almost automatically respected elders and leaders. Less true now because elders and leaders often don't deserve it, and we're paying the price for that now. I think there ought to be a resurgence of what it means to be an elder in any community, including the workplace. And then finally, respect other people and their property. Do not hurt other people or nick their stuff. Okay, when you do that, the bonds of communities and societies tend to fall apart. Does that make sense? Again, descriptive ethics. This doesn't happen all the time, everywhere, all at once. But this seems to be the way that we build thriving and sustainable communities. So in my work, I've distilled this down into 3 moral perspectives. I'll use these words once and then I'm not going to use them again. We care deeply about other people. That's often been described by moral philosophers as consequentialism or utilitarianism, more recently as the ethic of care. But it's about other people. The second one, make values-based judgments, is about making moral values-based judgments. Moral values are very specific. They are like love, fairness, courage. They are not a sort of tin of sweets that your corporation, your firm might rummage around and decide, oh, we'll have these values. You can have lots of different values, but there is a limited set of moral values, and we've spoken about them a lot today: trust, love, courage, fairness. Then finally, comply with clear, simple rules. Well, you know what that looks like? Not. The number of rules and regulations that you have to comply with, has anyone ever sat down and counted that in your profession? Anyone like to hazard a guess? Are we talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? I don't know. You're the experts. How many rules determine what you must and must not do? Tens of thousands, Brogan, thank you. Who can start writing down more than 100 of them? One of my clients, a large UK banking group, engaged one of their poor graduate interns to go around the bank and start listing and recording all the rules and regulations that the bankers had to comply with. When she came to the next meeting, the next senior leaders meeting, and they asked her for a report, she had got to over 30,000. The CEO then said, okay, let's start writing them down. They didn't get very far. What is the point? I can see when you've got a very binary, it's either works or doesn't work, profession like yours, you need that mathematical, that physics, that chemistry that actually works. But actually, when it comes to Homo sapiens, we're messy. And actually, things happen which we don't expect, which is why rules and laws are constantly being updated, because theory keeps hitting a new reality. But when you have so many rules, people stop thinking. People think, okay, what's the thing to do? Let's look it up. Whereas if you have a set of moral values or principles and you go to that go to those simple moral values, it enables you to make good judgments on the fly. But yes, we do need to have good, simple rules. Okay, so not only have I reduced 3 traditions of moral philosophy to 3 words, I've also put them into 3 traffic signs. So when we see that pedestrian crossing sign, we have to think about, in a literal sense, the impact of our actions on other people. When we reach a roundabout, we have to think about the values that will help us make a good judgment as to when it's safe to join the stream of traffic. And then finally, when we reach a stop sign or a traffic light, we simply must comply. If we don't, bad things can happen. Does that make sense? Again, please feel free to take a snapshot of that. Okay, I'm going to come up with another interactive exercise for you all in a minute. How can this go wrong at work? So I've described human morality as it exists when we're at our best, all around the world, because family and friendship and community are universal. How do you think that might go wrong at work? Anyone? I've managed to lose Slido on this. Oh, I've got it back. Shout out. How can it go wrong at work? Let me give you a clue, and then you can auto-complete this. Please open your phones if they're not already open and type into your browser of choice, "Why is my boss?" and see how Google auto-completes it. Please do the same online, and if you want to send through some examples, that would be great.
Ignoring me.
Diego ignoring me.
Nervous around me.
Nervous around me. What else?
Micromanaging me.
Micromanaging me. Anything else?
Suddenly being nice to me.
Oh, love that. That's a classic. Absolute classic. Okay. So here, they don't change very much. That screenshot was taken 10 years ago. So most of them are there. Why is my boss bullying me? So mean. Awkward around me. Picking on me. Micromanaging me, we had that one. Mean. Toxic. And so hard on me. Google is telling us, through its algorithm, what the complete questions are and puts them to the top, so you don't have to type in the whole thing. That's depressing, isn't it? Why do you think that is? What's the difference between the society we live in, certainly here in the UK, and some other societies, or the workplace, I should say, sorry.
Well, I don't think anyone Googles why do I have such a good relationship with my boss.
Very good. Although, would you want to try it and see what answer you get? So what's different about our workplace compared with our civic lives? We don't choose our leader. We choose to join or leave a firm, but actually, the workplace, unless it's a 1% of 1%, where the workers elect the CEO, might happen in partnerships more, but it's not a democracy. The workplace is a post-medieval feudal construct. Simple as that. We've only had democracy in this country, full democracy, all ages over the age of 18 and all genders, since just after the First World War. Only just over 100 years we've had full democracy. The Joint Stock Corporation was designed in the 17th century. The first examples were the East Indies Company and the Dutch East Indies Company, two great trading nations. And they both had a license from their governments to own slaves and wage war and literally rape and plunder and pillage those territories they were given in those licenses. And the formal legal status of the corporation has not changed since the year 1600. And in fact, we now have a situation where we're worried about the anthropomorphization of AI, but we actually have the corporation being given legal status as a person. And that's been true for a long time. So you're employed not by a human being, unless you are, but by a corporation. It's not a human-to-human relationship, and that gives rise to all sorts of problems. So, Moral DNA, you can try the free version online at moraldna.org, is a psychometric that we've developed. I've developed with a psychologist that measures how we prefer to make ethical decisions along the three axes that we've talked about. So rules, people, and values. At the back, you may see that as a bit of a stretch, or you may not see it. The red line in the middle, the flat red line, is the base scores for our 170,000 people in their personal private lives. So that's our baseline. Now, when we come to work, this weird stuff happens. When we make decisions at work, our moral DNA shifts dramatically. The people element of it drops down to about the 37th percentile. It's the weakest of the three dimensions. We sometimes think a bit more about the values we're supposed to make decisions by, but look what's driving, what's dominating our decision making, our critical thinking and decision making. It's not. You're not asked to think. You're not asked to make a decision. Your job is just to do as you're told, or else. Now, actually, in real life, we actually do have some leaders who are good people who actually value our opinions and will have a good debate with us. But the system is poorly designed for it. So you're constantly working against that. And unless you're lucky, and many of you obviously will have had fantastic leaders who have integrity and will listen to you, but too many people actually have leaders who are just bad bosses. And that drives really, really bad outcomes, because what they're looking for is to make themselves look good. That's narcissistic personality disorder. To lie and cheat and steal, that's the Machiavellian trait. Or if you're really unlucky and you've got a bully or worse, an abuser, they have subclinical psychopathy. And the news is full of them. Employment tribunals are full of them. Now, this feels like a bit of a ditch of despair, doesn't it? And I'm going to help us now climb the hill of hope out of this. But look, it's about looking at foundations here. This is not a great foundation to build a moral community, either in any society or community, and definitely not in a workplace. So I'm now going to share with you how we do this. So leaders with integrity create safe cultures for democratic debate and decision making. So one CEO I've worked with now at 3 organizations, his name is Joe Garner. I first met him at HSBC UK, and then when he moved to BT Openreach, the internet infrastructure provider, we worked there. And then from 2016 to 2022, he was CEO at Nationwide Building Society. And we termed the phrase democracy of voice. You don't get a vote, but you have a voice, you have a view, you have an informed opinion, you are professionals, highly qualified. Your voice matters, your skills and experience and knowledge matters. If your leader is not using that, then you'll probably be happier somewhere else. By the way, if you resign tomorrow, don't blame me if it all goes horribly wrong. And there's another trick here. It's based on the philosopher's golden rule. People feel safer speaking out, perhaps against the view of their boss, when playing the devil's advocate. Or crucially, it might be another stakeholder. It might be a client. It might be the local community, the local authority, planning officers, whatever. And you can say the thing that you might be afraid of saying by saying, if I was the client in this situation, this is what I would be thinking. Or if I was a planning officer and they're not around the table, this is what I might be thinking. It's the mask, it's the suit of armor that enables you to challenge with integrity and with safety. And then we make good decisions by going through those 3 moral DNA strands. How might people be helped or harmed by our decision? What moral values help us make our decision? Love, fairness, courage, trust. And are we complying with those beautifully clear, simple rules? So, how will we all now lead with integrity? So this is the bit where I'm going to almost do a pause, apart from leave that slide up. So I'd like you to take this opportunity to think about, if you can, anything that I've just said for the last 25 minutes, and see how that might help you in your endeavor, in this project, in this community that you've built. And it's about really how you all work together with your colleagues, with other members of your profession, with your clients, and so on and so forth. So that's a bit where we start going from the leading with integrity into the applied ethics. So just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll get hopefully some thoughts and questions and comments on Slido, and also from you, the audience. Over to you. All right. I'm actually out of time. I did this last time, Brogan, didn't I? But I'm going to ask for an extra minute or two just to get some thoughts from either online. You're being very quiet online, by the way. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here, but it's possible. Or some thoughts from the room. How do we connect this moral reasoning, moral landscape, this philosophy that I shared with you, with the practicalities of day-to-day work as structural engineers for a more sustainable future? Any thoughts?
You spoke quite a lot about the workplace. It kind of felt like it was you're focusing on an organisation, but and of course that's right. But often as engineers, we have to collaborate with different architects, builders, public bodies, and I don't know. I think that's getting a good collaboration is key to what we do, and that needs respect and flexibility of thinking amongst all the parties, and I find that often is lacking. I mean, it's okay to have tension because you disagree with people, but often one party feels more powerful than the other, or they exercise that power in a destructive way. So for engineers, I think collaboration is key to what we do, and it's sometimes difficult.
Really difficult. Yeah, I can see that. I can imagine that. And so one of the most effective things I've seen happening is where we've actually run multi-stakeholder practice sessions on, okay, so you're all around a table and you're going to be trying to make a decision on a project, right, now do it, and then we'll play it back and we'll see how you can improve it by listening to what other people are having to say, respecting their perspective and so on. So it's actually really powerful if you take that broader stakeholder view and that thing of collaboration. One more, please. At the back there.
Oh, would you mind? Oh, yeah, I can try and use the mic. I think one of the things it brought up was about the devaluing of people in a corporate setting, particularly. And I think one of the really positive ways to work around that is within a leadership group, have certain people who are responsible for focusing on, say, the rules and the bottom lines, and other people who are responsible for advocating for people, because it means that you've got that debate where you've got different things that you're coming in to argue with, and it enables that discussion and helps hopefully get to a better place overall.
Yeah, so I can see that. So basically some people have an expertise in control, so financial controls and so on. So other people need to be encouraged and supported so they A, grow, and B, make different contributions and even challenge some of those assumptions. So the problem with finance is that not only is basic economic theory fake news, so is much accounting, as you all know from a sustainability perspective, because it's got too many externalities. That we don't account for the cost of pollution and climate change and all the rest of it. I want to leave us on a message of hope. And the message of hope I'm going to leave you with is that actually most of us, most of the time, know this very deeply, and you'll be putting it into practice in your professional practice every day. But we can also all get better at it, including me, your resident moral philosopher for this afternoon. Thank you all so much for listening to me and for engaging. Oh, one last thing. I have 6 copies of this book, which I will happily give away at the break and at the drinks at the end. Sorry, online, I don't have any I can share with you, but you can buy it online and as digital, but there are 6 free copies. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger. What a fantastic message. I think the phrase that I liked the most was that compassion is the basis for morality. That was absolutely, I mean, so simple, but so important. To carry on with the message on ethics, we have now Will Arnold, who's been leading the institution's drive towards sustainability and decarbonization for the last, how many years? 5 years. And it's really sad to hear that he's leaving that post now, but we just wanted to thank you, Will, for that. So over to you, Will.
Thanks, Diego. Yeah, I wanted to sort of speak, I guess, in response to what Roger was saying, and try and sort of place some of these ethical points in the context of the world that we were working in. I think that, you know, the difficulty that we maybe face in our industry is that they are externalities. We don't see them. You can build the tallest tower in London and you won't see where the emissions go, where the materials came from, who died along the way, who was impacted by the pollution, where all the red mud has been hidden from all that aluminium, where all of the, you know, sand and granite and limestone all came from. It's all completely out of sight. And of course, you lot are here because you know about all of that and you care about it. That's why you've given up your afternoon. The problem we face is trying to convince the rest of the industry to try and do something about it with us. I think one of the things that really resonated with me about that video at the start was that the person who got the spotlight, the person who was able to shine, was a young girl who was raised to the top of that tower by everybody else. And presumably the sort of mastermind or masterminds behind the tower was stood somewhere around the base, or maybe weren't even in the same room. And there was something about not needing to sort of get the limelight and not making this about yourself and trying to be altruistic for the sort of greater good. And I think that that's the sort of philosophy that I've seen behind Structural Engineers Declare over the last 5 years, is this idea that, you know, we will only change the industry if we work as a community, as a collective group of individuals, not as one person. The other thing that I think is worth saying is that when I started this job, I remember Martin Powell, who was the chief exec at the time, saying, you know, the institution will support Structural Engineers Declare, but we're not part of Structural Engineers Declare. And he was always quite deliberate about that. He was quite deliberate at wanting to allow space for debate and allow this group to be maybe a bit more outspoken than we could be as an institution. And I hope that that would continue. I hope that, you know, as the sort of the committee of the declaration, you feel that, you know, it is up to you to sort of speak up and maybe say the things that we can't say as an institution. We give you this room every year so you can do exactly that. And we're supportive of the declaration so that you can do that. So you can be, I guess, that sort of moral voice, if you like. Earlier in the year, I helped organise a bunch of roundtables alongside the Institution of Civil Engineers, and we put leaders from industry in rooms with each other for an afternoon, and we got them to debate ethics, and we got them to ask what they thought would not be okay to be doing in work, say 10 years from now. We sort of worded the question to say, what would you consider to just be a moral dilemma today, but might be illegal or at least socially unacceptable in, say, 10 years' time? So in 2035. And if you think back to the world of 10 years ago, you can see quite a lot changed in 10 years. I think what came out of that, what was really interesting, was that the sort of system acts against us, right? We work in this world which is entirely driven by commercials. We over-design, we over-demolish, we get, our innovation sort of gets hindered and hampered. Everything is about trying to deliver on a bottom line. And that stands in the way of us trying to do the sort of the right thing, if you like. It stands in the way of us being able to maybe stand up and say, that's wrong, we don't want to do it like that, we need to do it like this. That was a really clear message that came out of 4 roundtables that we did. So we had one with supply chain, one with contractors, one with engineers, and one with clients, and they basically all came back to that same point every time. That commercial system that we work in stops us from trying to do the right thing at time to time. And we ran a completely separate bit of work around regenerative design quite recently, and we put people in a room who understood what regenerative design means, how you practice it, how you'd run workshops around it, and the same thing came up again, which was that yes, we understand the theory behind making projects that are altruistic, projects that think about the place in which they're based, they think about the places where the materials came from, where the waste ends up, that they think over longer periods of time than just today, and that they are designed and built in a way that affects and influences other projects as too for the greater good. We understand the theory around all of that stuff, but for as long as we're being forced to just deliver the cheapest, quickest project, we won't be able to do any of that. And so that all got me thinking that if you take this view of ethics and morality and kind of trying to do the right thing, and you're working within that system, what does that mean? And I guess it's kind of the question towards the end of your keynote module, like what do we do with that? And the best half answer I've been able to come up with so far is that if we don't try and do the right thing, if we don't speak up, then nothing will ever change. And I'm sure that people in other industries are asking all the same sorts of questions right now. The world of finance is asking it, the insurance world are asking it, and they will be saying, well, until the way they build buildings changes, we won't be able to do anything. So there's something really important about trying to sort of paint a picture of something that's different, to be able to prove that you can do things differently. If only to convince others to then change the system which we work within. I wasn't going to mention the fact that I was leaving, so thank you for doing that, Diego. But I guess I suppose the link to all of that would be that's kind of been what I've been trying to do for the last 5 years. I've tried to spotlight the work that you guys and others have been doing in a way that proves that we can do things differently. And I felt really privileged to be able to see across all these different firms that are doing all these amazing projects in different ways to the norm. They're not all the projects chasing the commercial cheapest option. There's loads of innovation out there. There's loads of amazing stuff. There's a building in central London right now where the steelwork's being jacked up because the floor to ceiling height of an existing building wasn't good enough. So instead of demolishing it, we're just going to stretch it and make it taller. There's projects out in the Nordic countries which are clad entirely in reused bits of facade from other buildings. There's projects being created in Switzerland where researchers have taken concrete rubble literally from a scrap tip, and they've taken it and they've sort of stacked it together like Tetris and glued it together with a little bit of mortar to prove that you could take post-disaster rubble and build houses out of it. All of these things are different to what we do today. And it's been amazing to be able to sort of see those things. It gives me real hope that we can do things differently. And I guess what my ask would be of this room would be that you do speak up on projects. You do call out the fact that, are we just doing the sort of commercially driven thing? Is this the right thing to do? Is there a different way we could do it? And that maybe actually sometimes you're brave enough to even walk away from a job when you feel that you're speaking up and nothing's really changing. And you're sort of willing to put up your hand and say, fine, that somebody else can do that then. Because I think that until we start to take a slightly bolder view like that, nothing will really change, right? We will just allow the sort of the norm to continue. The last thing I wanted to say was that there was one of the quotes that came out of one of those ethics roundtables we ran, which really resonated with me, was that silence is not neutrality when it comes to this stuff. Silence is being complicit. And that really stuck with me. The idea of just saying, well, I've said my bit and no one's listening, I'm going to get on with it, is not enough. We have to speak up. And so, yeah, I guess if there's one thing I'd request of you all as I now disappear from iStruct to go back into consulting, it's that you keep making lots of noise and you keep speaking up. Thank you.
I hope you can still see me behind the enormous lectern because I'm quite small. And I have a bit of a change of tone as we are going to go through some survey results. So a few months ago, everybody was sent out the commitments and we asked you to kind of rank how you felt we were doing against each one. And then with some written answers as well. And then we've kind of thought about what we want to do next with that information. So I'm going to go through, that's Will's bit. This is my bit. So I'm going to go through each of the commitments. I've grouped them where they make sense to group them. And there is a lot of information. I'm not going to talk through all of it, but we're going to send out some information afterwards so you can all read it properly. And then, are you okay? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm also quite quiet as well as being small, so I'm going to stand closer to this. So we've got our commitments 1, 2, and 3, which we've grouped into advocacy and knowledge sharing. And when I ran through this with one of my colleagues yesterday, she pointed out that I was being very negative in saying that there's so much orange and red on these, but actually the orange is also some progress. So I think it's important to look at those aspects as well. So we've got commitment 1, we know is raising awareness of climate and biodiversity emergencies, which is pretty good actually, very little dark red. And then commitment 2 is advocacy for faster change towards regenerative design practices and a higher governmental funding priority to support this. This is very red. This is because it's an extremely confusing sentence and everybody has answered it very differently. So we'll come on to this in later on, but there's also a huge difference in responses because one of the things we did was we tracked what size of the company was, who was replying, and actually smaller companies really find this kind of a commitment really difficult to say that they align with because they're not lobbying for governmental funding. They've got a business to run, maybe there's only 5 of them in the company. So, and then there's a real lack of clarity on what regenerative is. So some people are answering whether they're sustainable, some people are answering whether they're regenerative. And that's why it's all a bit of a mishmash. Commitment 4 is share knowledge and research on an open source basis. Generally, people were actually quite positive about sharing knowledge and resource, and even at like different scales. So some of them is like, I am an educator, and some of them are like, I post a lot on LinkedIn about the things that I think are important, which is all great. There is some confusion on what open source means. So that one's one to look out for. We've got evaluation, analysis and tracking. So commitment 5 is evaluating all new projects against the aspiration to contribute positively to mitigating climate breakdown. Another confusing sentence, but generally positive. Everybody has said that they are at least in some way, maybe not quantitatively, but qualitatively assessing the impacts of their projects and then making their clients aware. And commitment 7 is including life cycle costing, whole life, blah, blah, blah. You can read it, but as the basic scope of work. So there's a lot of confusion in the responses on what LCC and what whole life cycle analysis is. Pretty much everybody said, I don't know what post-occupancy evaluations are, let alone whether I do them as my basic scope of work. And then the next one is reducing waste. We've got 3 commitments on reducing waste. We've got upgrading existing buildings, hugely positive, great work. Number 9 is collaborating to reduce construction waste. And number 11 is minimizing wasteful use of resource in structural engineering in design, both in quantum and in detail. Who knows what that means? And we think that commitment 6 and 9 are generally circular economy. And then commitment 11 is lean design. So they're the kind of difficulties with these. But when we were looking through the answers for these questions at this point in the survey, some of the comments that were coming in were, I've answered this question 10 times now. Why are you asking me again? And now we've got the last 3, which are design excellence. So this is definitely the most read, is the one on the left, which is through awards, prizes and listings. So there's quite a negative response towards awards because it feels like they're often only favouring large companies because they're the people who can spend the time and resource to actually put themselves forwards for awards. And maybe that doesn't actually value the smaller things that we do on a day-to-day. And then 8 is adopting more regenerative design principles in practice with the aim of providing structural engineering design that achieves the standard of net zero carbon. Another confusing one because there are 2 aims in here. One of them is regenerative design and one of them is net zero carbon. They are not the same. And people are therefore responding to them both differently. And then commitment 10 is accelerate the shift to low embodied carbon materials, which was also a generally positive one. So this is our overall donut. You can see that there's a lot of orange and yellow mainly, people not being quite sure on the fence. And we asked an additional 2 questions. One was, do you think that the commitments should be changed? Only 20% of the people who responded said they do think they should be, and 30% said not, but 50% said they're not sure. And some of the comments on why do you think that they should be changed were they're too repetitive, they are unclear, they lack quantitative metrics, which is a very engineer's answer. They need to be more informative, but they also need to be simpler. They need to follow Architects Declare, and there is too much talk and not enough action, and there's also no requirements for just transition, which is also in Architects Declare. And then the other question is, do you think that we should be doing reporting? So 41% of people said no, but 90% of those no's were for companies with less than 50 people. And this really highlights the fact that we can't treat everybody the same. There is equity and not equality kind of side going on here, and we need to make sure that we're supporting all of our engineers, even then if they're not in our own companies. So based on this, we thought, actually, I don't think the commitments are working as they are now. And maybe you'll disagree, and maybe you think that we'll keep them the same, but I'm going to take you through the process that we used to try and rewrite them, and then we're going to send everything out, and then I want as many comments as possible so we can all put them together to something that we've all written together, rather than something that everybody has just signed up for. So firstly, these are our steps. You do not have to read them. Firstly, we compared to Architects Declare and Building Services Declare. So 2 differences. One is that Architects Declare have a requirement for a just transition. And the second one is number 8, which is the one that is confusing because it refers to regenerative principles and the standard net zero. The crucial words that have been removed from our ones are that Architects Declare aim for going beyond the standard of net zero, and we aim specifically for net zero. So we're adding those back in. The next one is that we've split them out, so we're not trying to rate ourselves against multiple different things. So the climate and biodiversity emergencies have been dealt with very differently, and so we need to have them separate so that we can see whether we're achieving those separately. And then we've split out the higher government funding. All of my arrows are moved, but you can get the idea. The advocating for faster change for government priority, we've split those into 3, and then those 2 bits at the bottom I've gone through. And then, so as I mentioned, there are 3 waste commitments, and 2 of them are about circular economy. So we've merged those 2 together. And then we've got rid of some of the slightly woolly language, like in quantum and in detail, and generally kind of cleaned them up a bit. And then we've removed 4. And that's because a lot of people found when they were responding to these was that they found that they weren't applicable to designers. So I know there's a lot of people who are from academic institutions who are attending today, and I think that it would make sense if they have different commitments because they do different jobs. And one of the things that we've removed from this one are things that we felt best sat with institutions like the iStructE or any of the kind of material specific ones. So big reveal is these are our 10 that we're left with, and there's now a greater emphasis on action rather than advocacy and evaluation, and they're all should be clearer. I could read them out, but I'm not going to, because we've already been through that process. And then the other thing that we've identified is that people want clarity, but also more information. So we were thinking, and I would also, we would really value your opinion on this, is that maybe we should, as the SED, provide more guidance. And this might also open up the door for being able to include quantitative metrics for continued membership, so that we can kind of split out, actually, what should I be achieving by next year? Like, I don't know. We know roughly what we're aiming for, but how do you break that down into smaller steps? And how do I break that down for me if I'm one person in a company of 20,000 or a company of 5? Then we can break them down into advocacy and action and evaluation. Maybe some of them could be, if you're in a big company, you're helping some small companies, these kind of things. So we will be sending all of this out to everybody afterwards for comment, but we can only do that if we have your updated email addresses, which brings us on to another thing, which was everybody was contacted to make sure that we had your company's most up-to-date email addresses, and we've had maybe less than half of people responding. So unless your company has the most updated email address on our system, we will not be able to contact you. So if you'd still like to be part of Structural Engineers Declare, please make sure that your company has a valid email address, because a lot of people have, for instance, left the company, or they're like the CFO of some multinational company, which is great, but they don't necessarily check their emails all the time. So yeah, make sure your email's up to date. Look out for an email on this. We want loads of opinions and things. We're not going to dive into it now because we could be here for hours, I think, debating these. But yeah, so that's my bit. I'm going to hand over to session 2. Thank you.